Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the TKS StarLord frame. Well, not just the frame, we're gonna fly it too. And this frame comes from jax3dprinting.com. This is the 1S variant, so I use BetaFPV 1102 18,000 kV motors on GemFan 2023 props. Got the NewBeeDrone BeeBrain canopy with a Runcam Nano and the V2 lens. CrazyBeeX board version 2.2. You can use really any 1S board that you prefer. And I did use the GNB 27 connector, and I get 3.5 minutes on this GNB 450 milliamp battery. It weighs a little over 33.5 grams, and with the GNB battery, it weighs almost 47 grams. Motor post to motor post, I am getting 90 millimeters. Carbon fiber is 2.5 millimeters thick. So we've got a nice calm day, and it's bright and sunny. And we can see a little bit of the prop in view. And you might be asking yourself, well, I thought you liked 2S on the TKS Rocket Race. Why are you doing 1S? Well, because essentially these two are going to fly very, very similar depending upon your configuration. If you build them the same, they'll fly about the same. I like the Rocket Race. There's something about being smaller that it gives me more pleasure knowing that I've got this super small little quad and I'm able to do all the things I want to do when I fly. When it starts to get bigger, that dissipates that excitement, that thought that I'm flying something really, really small. It just kind of starts, well, it doesn't dissipate. It's just I'm more in tune, or I enjoy the fact that knowing I'm flying something that's smaller more. So, but I do think because it's inherently larger, it's 90 millimeters instead of 78 millimeters like the Race Rocket, or if you could just get the original TKS, it's 75 millimeters, that it's going to be a little bit more stable. So as far as flight characteristics, if you're maybe earlier on in your FPV journey, you may prefer a larger platform because larger platforms or larger quads, up to a point, I guess, are inherently more stable. So it'd be easier to fly. One of the questions that I get kind of often, and sometimes I forget to cover it in these videos, the audio that you're hearing is not coming from the quad. It is a secondary camera that I am recording that's sitting on the table next to myself, and then I blend that in with editing. So these BetaFPV 1102 18,000 kV motors, they're much more available, at least they were last time I looked, than the 1102 10,000 kV motors that I've been using on the Race Rocket for a 2S variety. So you should be able to build one out a little bit easier. The hard part is, of course, doing the CrazyBee side. You do not have to use the CrazyBee board. Really, you just need a 1S board. Most of these boards that do 1 and 2S, they're essentially running the same amp rating when it comes to the ESC. So you could pick and choose your board of choice, and you can build it out accordingly. When we get back to the desk, I am going to cover a little bit about the rubber band saga. Well, it's not really a saga. I'm making more of it than I should. So I went on a journey trying to find rubber bands and spent hours looking all over the internet, a lot of time on Amazon. And it turns out the rubber bands I probably needed was pointed out to me with a 2-minute search by Kibbles Malone. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You embarrass me with my lack of Google Foo, apparently, when it comes to finding rubber bands on the internet. And I'll show you that package. I've switched pretty much all of my TKS quads over to that rubber band. And it's a funny thing to be making such a big deal about in a video, but that's how I secure the battery. I'm not a huge fan of prints for battery mounts. I just find that I tear them off. Maybe that's because of the way I crash or my environment or something. So if I have a rubber band, yeah, it might take me a few extra minutes to get my screws taken apart where I need them to be so I can run a new rubber band, but at least I'm not waiting on another print. In the case of a print, you might have 3 screws and they have to come entirely out. I don't have to pull 3 screws entirely out. But these things are a lot of fun, and I think it doesn't fly like 1S, not in my opinion. But 1S has also gotten way better than maybe back when we first started 1S. So that is the end of our flight. You can see there we've got 3 minutes and 35 seconds on that 1S 450 milliamp battery. So this is my 2S variant. I'm just going to show you this. I built it out pretty much the same as I did for the Race Rocket because I did want to compare them. And if you're looking for a size comparison, maybe I should just hold them up here just a touch. And it doesn't look like much, but when you put it in your hand, it starts to feel like a lot more. And there's something about this size that I just prefer it. This flies great, and I enjoyed my flight time with it, and it was a lot of fun. And the frame has a little bit more flair, I think. This one has, you know, it has some sharper edges. It has kind of that star sort of shape to it. And it has kind of that movie theme. What's the name of the movie? Those characters with Groot and... Um, oh, I can't remember now, but they've been kind of going after a movie theme. Geez, I wish I could remember the name of that movie. I should stop the video. Well, let's just move on. So I built this one essentially the same as I did this one for 2S. And then I've also got the race rocket over here. Whoops, I got stuff falling all over the place. Excuse me a moment here. This is the light version. I still prefer this on 2S over these others, but again, 1S has its advantages because the batteries are cheaper. You probably have batteries around, and you may even have some of these components in a Whoop, and maybe you just need to get motors. Again, you can use any 1S all-in-one flight control ESC board you want. I just happen to use the CrazyBeeX because I bought a bunch of those at one particular time. I've since gotten a lot more of them because they became kind of hard to get, but you can use any 1S board that you prefer. The GemFan props on here, I think I mistakenly told someone you could fly 2.5-inch props, and in my experience with trying you can dry fit 2.5-inch props and they'll spin freely, and you'll think, all right, that's fine. But in flight, it was knocking on something. So if that was you that I told that you could fly 2.5-inch props on the StarLord, I apologize. You may be able to, but making some adjustment for whatever I had that was kind of ticking in flight, and it didn't fly great with that little ticking. It was causing a little bit of a flight issue, and I could hear it in flight, but I could not figure out what it was hitting because whatever it was hitting wasn't making any marks on it, and if it was just one prop, it wasn't really, you know, giving itself away as far as what was knocking. So I moved back to 2-inch props. I do think you could fly 65mm props on this. 65mm is just a touch less than 2.5-inch. But I think flying 2.5-inch, especially tri-blades on 1S, it's probably going to be a little bit much for the motors. You're probably going to have to move down in KV a little bit in order to be able to handle those effectively. Oh, and the rubber band. Let me get my rubber bands out. I got these from AliExpress. I've been ordering some stuff from AliExpress, kind of exploring that a lot more. This is the name of the AliExpress store, and I can link this down in the video description. I bought a bag of 100, which is kind of ridiculous, but I think it was like $7 for 100, and I think you got 50 for $5 or something like that. So I was like, well, for $2, I'll just get a bunch more. I can use them somewhere along the line. And then it's got the shop code here. These are 40mm thick rubber bands from Storkfly. When I ordered these, it also came with some larger white rubber bands as a thank you gift. And these are my original rubber bands here. These are a little bit longer, but they're also less, I guess the term would be elastic, because they don't, when you start to stretch these out, they have the same stretchiness the further out you get, whereas these get stiffer the further out. And I find for 1 and 2S, these rubber bands do work out very well. So you may, if you're into micros, want to pick up a package of those. Of course, I've used my favorite, what I call Emax tape. And that's linked also down in the video description, way down to the bottom. I think there's a part that says Emax tape, as well as from Amazon. Amazon carries it as well. I recently bought some more of that tape because I was starting to get low. You can see in my configuration that I have the rubber band below the canopy in front, and then I used a longer screw in the back, and I just looped the rubber band over the top. So if I were to break this, I only have to take this one screw down to board level and get another rubber band in there, and then I'm good to go for the next flights. Some people also pointed out that the Rocket Race didn't really have any motor protection. If you're looking for motor protection, then the Race Rocket, or excuse me, the StarLord, I'm getting my tongue tied here. The StarLord does have these little spikes out here, so you do have some of that motor protection that some of you were looking for, and that should help with your motors and taking damage, especially if you're flying around much harder surfaces than I do. You know, I'm in the backyard where 9 times out of 10 when I crash into the ground, but I do sometimes still hit the trees and the house and the swing set and those things like that. It's a pretty straightforward build. It's all plug and play as long as you get a board like this. You can decrease the weight by taking off the connectors and do a direct solder. If you're doing direct solder, you probably want to look at the Happy Model Diamond F4 board. That has the 200 milliwatt in it, and it also has some nice large pads for soldering. It's a little bit tedious to solder these tiny little wires, but if you're into micros, you've probably done that by this point. And if you're just getting started in micros, I wouldn't encourage you to get right into soldering the tiny little wires and stripping them and doing those things. You know, do the plug and play version, and then after you get one of those going, maybe venture into soldering the tiny little wires. Not that you can't do it, it's just me being cautious. I want you to have fun and enjoy your time rather than spending your time trying to figure out how to solder effectively to relatively small pads with tiny little wires. I'll have a list of all the different parts that I've used. I tell you, I need to do something cleaner with my parts list because I think that caused a fair bit of confusion. I tried to find a bunch of different sources for parts and then just start to list them all. So I think what I'll do is I'll list the part name, and then I'll list the stores that carry that part, or at least they're having listings at the time of this video for that part, and then I'll have the next part, and then the store name and the links, those parts for that part. So I'll have like a parts section, like if you want to buy from, say, AliExpress, then you click the link for the main board, in AliExpress. If you want to buy from BetaFPV and you want to get the motors, you go down to the motor section and you click BetaFPV. So you can find this stuff. The board that I used is the hardest thing to find right now. But if you go to AliExpress, I found that you can get all the parts you need for any of these builds. And they arrive in about 2.5 weeks coming from China. I've been fairly impressed with my experience on AliExpress. And many of our drone manufacturers have official stores on AliExpress. I got notification last night that Emax has an official store on AliExpress. So if you're looking to buy Emax parts, you can go to AliExpress. And AliExpress is a marketplace, and from a customer service standpoint, you also have the benefit of being able to have AliExpress step in between you and the actual seller to resolve any sort of issues, whether it's a package that wasn't received, the wrong product was sent, or the product was damaged. I haven't run through any of those experiences yet, but I have gotten comments from a number of people, especially our international friends that order a lot from AliExpress. And generally speaking, the prices are a little bit lower on AliExpress than, say, Banggood. So that's another reason why to look at that. I know a lot of, in the U.S., we're kind of spoiled. We have, nice big FPV shops in several parts of the country, and you may be near one where you can just run over and pick up some parts. If you want to get the frame, which is your starting point, again, that's at jax3dprinting.com, and I'll have a top link to Jax 3D Printing. Jack has also got a Facebook group called Jax 3D Printing, where a lot of people are sharing their builds and their experiences with these, and that's a good place to go to get some additional information about different variants of builds and your experiences. Jack also has a few other frames. Again, this was designed by Kevin Langlois, and he's got a few more frames coming. Kevin is the designer, and Jack is cutting the carbon and being the distributor in this particular case. But if you do have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comments section below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching. If you want to see the 2S version, just let me know in the comments section. I can surely do a video on it. I sure wouldn't mind flying it some more for you.